There's a particular kind of loneliness that visits you in the depths of academic work. 3 in the morning. Your desk is a graveyard of coffee, cups, and crossed out equations. The room is silent except for the hum of a computer you've been staring at for hours. And then it happens. A crack opens up in everything you thought you understood. You realize you've been climbing the wrong mountain. Maybe that's happened to you. Not in physics necessarily. Maybe it was in business, in relationships, in your career, in how you've shaped your entire worldview. You wake up at an impossible hour and think, have I been wrong about the fundamental things? And the question doesn't let you sleep. We spend our lives chasing answers. We accumulate credentials, read books, binge educational videos, attend seminars, all because we're desperate for someone wiser to hand us a map. We want the world to make sense. We want an authority figure to say, here's the truth. You can relax now. But the universe doesn't work that way. The universe is patient but unforgiving. It refuses to give away the answer key. It doesn't even tell you if you're hunting for the right things. And there was one person, one singular human being, who understood this more deeply than almost anyone in history. He lived in constant conversation with uncertainty. And near the end of his life, he gave a talk that wasn't about quarks or quantum mechanics or the nature of light. It was a warning. It was about something far more dangerous than any physics problem. It was about how we lie to ourselves without even knowing we're doing it. And when he said what he said, it cut through the room like a blade, because he wasn't being poetic or humble. He was being honest in a way most people can't stomach. Richard Feynman stood in front of some of the brightest minds in the world and told them, this, most of what you believe, you don't actually know. You've just convinced yourself that you do. And that's self-deception. That's the real threat. He'd seen it everywhere. At Los Alamos, where brilliant people built weapons without asking hard enough questions about what they were doing. In the Challenger investigation, where smart people bent reality to fit what they wanted to believe. In universities, where professors lectured the same way their predecessors did, updating nothing, questioning nothing, curious about almost nothing. And his message was harsh. He said, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. That statement didn't just change physics. For those who truly heard it, it changed everything. But here's what's important to understand. Feynman wasn't being pessimistic. He wasn't suggesting we should despair. He was pointing at something structural in how human minds actually work. A flaw we all carry. A flaw that whispers to you right now, saying, yes, this applies to other people. Not you, though. You're too smart for this. You're too careful. That's how you know it's got you. Let's be specific about what Feynman actually said. Stripped of the mythology, pulled from his final lectures and writings and conversations. Here's what he kept returning to: science isn't about being right. Science is about being less wrong than you were before. It sounds simple, but spend a moment with it. Really think about what that means. Every scientific law you've learned, every equation, every principle, every so-called fact is a placeholder. It's temporary scaffolding. It's what we're using until something better comes along. Newton gave us gravity. For 2 centuries, it worked beautifully. It predicted everything. It made sense. Then Einstein showed up and said, actually, that's only half the story. Einstein's relativity has worked for 100 years. But Feynman suspected, and he wasn't alone, that even that would eventually be revealed as incomplete. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If the greatest minds in history created theories that seemed perfect and unshakable, and yet they all eventually turned out to be partial truths at best, wrong at worst, what makes you think the things you're certain about today are any different? Not just in science, in your political beliefs, in your understanding of how relationships work, in your self-image, in what you think success looks like. We are pattern matching machines living in a universe that never promised to fit our patterns. Then Feynman introduced a concept that still makes the scientific community uncomfortable. He called it cargo cult science. He told a story. During World War II, American soldiers established bases on Pacific islands. They brought radios, vehicles, food, medicine, technologies the indigenous people had never imagined. When the war ended, the soldiers left. The prosperity vanished. The abundance disappeared. Desperate to bring it back, some of the islanders began constructing imitation airports. They carved wooden headphones. They built control towers from bamboo branches. They trained people to stand with sticks and wave them in the way they'd seen soldiers direct planes. From a distance, it looked exactly like a real airport. The form was correct. The ritual was intact. But no planes ever came. That's what most of what passes for science has become, Feynman said. It has the appearance of rigor. It uses the language. It publishes in peer-reviewed journals. It holds conferences. It has all the external markers of legitimacy. But it's missing the one essential ingredient that makes science actually work. What is that ingredient? Radical, painful, complete honesty about what you don't know. Real scientists, Feynman argued, don't just report their successes. They describe every way their experiment might have been flawed. Every assumption they made that could be wrong. Every alternative explanation they can't quite rule out. They actively, deliberately try to disprove their own theories. They look for the weak points. They're trying to destroy what they've built. But most scientists don't do this. Most people don't do this. We build our bamboo structures. We perform our rituals. We use the correct language and follow the right procedures. And we wonder why the planes never land. So why are we so catastrophically bad at seeing our own delusions? Feynman had thoughts about this, and they connect to something fundamental about the architecture of human consciousness. Think back to a serious disagreement you've had. Really take yourself there. Now ask yourself, at any point in that argument, did you genuinely, truly consider that you might be completely wrong? That the other person was seeing something you literally could not see? That your certainty might actually be a sign of your blindness? Probably not. And here's the part that should terrify you. Your brain is designed to work this way. Evolution didn't build you to find truth. Evolution built you to win, to survive, to appear strong to your tribe, to maintain your social position, to protect your ego. Those survival mechanisms have nothing to do with accuracy. They only need you to feel right, not be right. Feel right. Feynman understood this deeply. He said the human brain is the most sophisticated self-deception machine ever engineered. We don't fool ourselves occasionally, or when we're careless, we do it constantly. Every memory you have has been edited by your brain, not maliciously, but systematically. Every belief you hold has been filtered through your biases. Every certainty you feel is probably concealing a doubt you're not brave enough to examine. And here's the part that gets worse the more you think about it. Intelligence doesn't protect you from self-deception. Intelligence makes you better at it. Intelligent people are masterful at constructing elaborate, convincing justifications for positions they arrived at for purely emotional reasons. We're all unreliable narrators of our own lives. This is what keeps me awake, not cosmic mysteries, not questions about the far edges of physics. This every single day, I make decisions based on beliefs I've never genuinely questioned, and I have no reliable method for determining which of my convictions are bamboo runways and which ones are solid ground. Neither do you. But Feynman didn't stop with individual self-deception. He pointed out that entire civilizations can fool themselves, entire fields of knowledge, entire historical epochs. Think about the things humanity was absolutely, utterly certain about. The things our smartest people were convinced were obviously true. The earth is the center of everything, and the sun revolves around it. Diseases come from bad smells. Bloodletting cures illness. Some groups of humans are naturally less intelligent than others. Homosexuality is a psychiatric disorder that needs to be treated. Mental illness is a moral failing. These weren't fringe opinions held by a few cranks. These were mainstream. These were consensus. The most educated people of their time believed them. Universities taught them. Books were written defending them. If you had questioned them, you would have been dismissed with the same condescending pity you might feel right now toward historical people who believed obviously false things. And here's the question Feynman wanted you to sit with. What are we wrong about right now? What does your generation believe with complete certainty that will seem absurd, maybe even cruel, to people 200 years from now? You can't know which beliefs those are. If you could identify them, you wouldn't believe them. That's the trap. That's the cage. And the worst part is, you can't escape it through intelligence or education or careful thinking. Those tools might even make the cage more comfortable. They give you better arguments for yourself, deceptions. This is where Feynman's idea becomes radical, revolutionary even. He reframed doubt itself. He said doubt is not weakness. Doubt is not something to overcome. Doubt is not a temporary state before you arrive at certainty. Doubt is the only honest position. Doubt is the gateway to understanding. We're taught our entire lives that confidence is virtue. That knowing what you believe is a mark of strength. That changing your mind is flip-flopping. That admitting ignorance is shameful or weak. Feynman said this entire framework is backwards. The people who are most certain, he said, are usually the most wrong. They're the ones who built elaborate structures to protect their worldview. They've stopped asking questions because the answers seem obvious. The people who hold their beliefs lightly, who actively search for evidence against their own positions, who can say, I don't know, without shame, who change their minds when confronted with something compelling. Those are the people who actually move the needle. Those are the ones who discover new things. Look at the history of science itself. Every genuine breakthrough came from someone willing to say, what if everything we think we understand about this is actually incomplete? Newton did it. Einstein did it. Feynman did it with quantum electrodynamics. The scientists who clung to certainty, who refused to question their assumptions, who defended their old theories against new evidence. Their names are footnotes now, cautionary tales, examples of resistance to truth. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. Here's the question Feynman danced around, but maybe couldn't fully answer. If we can never be truly certain, if doubt is the only honest position, if our brains are constantly betraying us, how do you actually live? Because you do have to live. You wake up. You make choices. You decide what matters. You allocate your time and your energy and your attention. You move through the world acting as though your understanding of it is at least roughly accurate. You act as though your goals make sense, as though your values are real. But Feynman just dismantled all of that. He's told you that everything you're certain about is probably contaminated, that you're navigating with a map drawn by an evolutionary system that was optimized for survival, not for truth. So what do you do with that? Some people hear this and fall into nihilism. Nothing can be known, so nothing matters. Why try? But Feynman wasn't a nihilist. He was the opposite. He was one of the most alive, most playful, most engaged human beings who ever existed. He played bongos for joy. He picked locks as entertainment. He went to strip clubs to think about physics. He drew pictures. He asked children to explain things to him. He was relentlessly, almost childishly curious. He experienced deep joy, deep meaning, deep satisfaction. And he did it all while holding the belief that he didn't know what the universe fundamentally was. How do you dance when you suspect the floor might not be there? This is where Feynman's final message transforms. It stops being terrifying, it becomes something beautiful. He said, uncertainty isn't a prison, it's an opening. Think about it this way. If you already knew everything, what would pull you toward tomorrow? If every question had an answer, if every mystery had been solved, if there was nothing left to learn, if perfect certainty could be yours, wouldn't that be a kind of death? Wouldn't that be the absence of everything that makes life worth living? Real joy, Feynman said, comes from the questions, not the answers. It comes from the pursuit, not the capture. Every time you say, I don't know, you're not admitting defeat. You're opening a door. You're saying, there's something here I haven't understood yet, and I might. He looked at the universe, all of it in all its vastness and indifference and mystery, and he saw wonder. He saw a playground without boundaries. He saw not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be explored. And this is what he said about living with doubt. I can live with doubt and uncertainty and not knowing. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers that might be wrong. He wasn't settling. He wasn't making peace with limitation. He was expressing a genuine preference. He preferred the questions to false certainties because false certainties are a kind of death. They're the moment curiosity stops. They're the closing of doors. If you asked me if I could trade my doubt for certainty, even if that certainty were true, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't exchange the questions for answers, because the questions are where the life lives. So here's what I've taken from this. Every morning I get to wake up not knowing something I'll know by evening. That's a good day. Every conversation that changes my mind, that's a gift I didn't expect. Every realization that I was completely wrong about something I was absolutely sure about, that's growth. That's becoming less wrong than I was. I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. That's what Feynman taught me. That's one of the few things I'm willing to assert with something approaching confidence. The universe doesn't owe you answers. It doesn't promise you comfort or meaning or resolution, but it offers something better. It offers the endless, brutal, beautiful, terrifying adventure of trying to understand, the privilege of being confused, the opportunity to be wrong, the chance to change, and every moment you spend genuinely questioning, genuinely uncertain, genuinely open to being mistaken. That's a moment you're fully alive. That's a moment the bamboo runways have no power over you. That's a moment you're doing what Feynman spent his entire life trying to teach us. So the question isn't whether you can live with uncertainty. You're already living with it. You're drowning in it. The real question is, are you going to pretend you're on solid ground, or are you going to dance?